Our stream is live. And first, thank you to all the people who have been viewing us today on our 17th Life Tech. It is our 2020 virtual Life Tech conference in this crazy year of the COVID. We hope that you've been enjoying the session so far. And that brings us up to the current session, where it is my honor and privilege to welcome Steve Koob, who is going to be talking about his subject is contraception, a pro-life issue, and as I don't think there's anyone more suited to introduce himself than him, I will pass this on over to him. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, and then tell us a bit about what you want to talk about?
Well, hi, Reg. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this event. I've been to several of your past Life Tech conferences. I think I spoke at one many, many years ago. My wife says, well, your topic is not really a technical topic. How come you're doing this about contraception? Well, I don't know how or why. I asked to do it and you let me do it, so I appreciate it. It's a subject dear to my heart, contraception and proception. Proception is a very good word. It's in the dictionary. And well, to tell you a little bit about myself, I grew up in southwestern Minnesota, farm country, a little bitty town. Graduated from small Catholic high school, 10 in my class. I was a valedictorian. I think the principal, Sister Prosper, cooked the books. My cousin would be second and I would be first. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity that my parents gave me to go to college. Neither of them went to college. And got 3 engineering degrees, and more recently a MA in theological studies from the University of Dayton. So I just wish I had learned more about philosophy and theology in undergraduate school or graduate school, someplace along the line, because I feel like I'm more attuned to being a theologian than an engineer. I haven't done engineering for a long time. I was in the Air Force for 20 years. Assigned to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base all that time. The only PCS I had was to Purdue University, where I received the PhD in fluid mechanics. And I taught at the Air Force Institute of Technology for 8 years during my 20-year time assigned to Wright Field. The rest of the time I was in the laboratory, either as a researcher or as a branch chief for a while. That's an honor. But anyway, I'm married. I claim 20 children, but 5 of those are grandchildren that live with us, so I'm kind of their foster father. And the rest of them are legitimate. 5 of them are adopted. Vivian and I have, I think, 19 grandchildren. So that's kind of this quick run through of my life. Been in the pro-life movement since right before I retired from the Air Force. I ran for state representative in Clark County against 2 pro-aborts, David Hobson and David Hartley. As an independent, I got 10% of the vote, which people thought was pretty good. I thought it was terrible. I thought, man, please, there's 33% more out there that would vote for me, but they didn't. Anyway, the most important issue, well, I've been in several Right to Life organizations, Ohio Right to Life, Clark County Right to Life, Dayton Right to Life. Started an American Family Association chapter here in Dayton to confront obscenity and pornography. Started with my wife, Elizabeth's New Life Center, which she has taken to enormous heights with 7 pregnancy resource centers scattered from Cincinnati to Sydney. Saves over 2,000 babies a year. So I'm very proud of her and the work that she's done. My claim to fame as a co-founder that's about all I did. So, and while I was working with Mary Ann Walsh at Dayton Right to Life Society in the late 1980s, Mary Ann said to me one day, Steve, I think contraception's a root cause for abortion. I said, Mary Ann, I agree with you. The next year we started One More Soul to help people understand how contraception leads to abortion and how children are a blessing. Mary Ann and her husband Jim had 10 children. And I asked her one day, well, Mary Ann, how come you only have 10? I thought maybe she used natural family planning or something. And she says, well, that's just all the children God gave us. And I knew what she meant. So today I'd like to talk about contraception and the possibility of it being a pro-life issue. Should it be a pro-life issue? Abortion is the primary pro-life issue of our time, as all of our listeners and viewers realize and know. You're all pro-life, I'm certain. And there are hundreds of organizations that do what they can to prevent abortion. From 40 Days for Life with their magnificent programs, 80 days of the year, they're out there, they're praying, they're speaking to women coming in, boyfriends or husbands or whatever, and they save babies all over the world. It's incredible what they do. And of course, there's national organizations, National Right to Life, and Americans United for Life, and Human Life International, American Life League, Pro-Life Action League, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's Doctors for Life and Lawyers for Life and every other kind of pro-life organization that you can think of. So what about contraception? The pro-life movement is well aware that contraception supports abortion in two ways. So shouldn't it be considered as a pro-life issue? We all know that contraceptive methods fail, and that often brings the woman to either a pregnancy support center or a pregnancy termination center. And both these organizations conduct interviews of their clients, intake interviews, and they'll ask them, well, how did you get pregnant, or whatever, how they word it. But from these surveys, we find out that, whether it's one organization or the other, about 50 to 60% of women that come to them are claim they were on a contraceptive before they got pregnant. Well, if they hadn't been on a contraceptive, they still would probably get pregnant, but they were trying to avoid getting pregnant, but that failed, and so they got pregnant. So we can argue that contraception leads to abortion. Therefore, we should be doing what we can to prevent contraception use. I've heard people say, and I suspect it's true, that we'll never completely eradicate abortion unless we can eradicate contraception. The other way that we know that contraception leads to abortion is because the most common forms of contraception are hormonal-based. The IUD, the pill, of course, the shot, the patch, the insert. Any way they can get that garbage into their woman's body, they'll do it. And we all know that hormonal contraceptive supposedly has three mechanisms of operation. But the last mechanism is the thinning of the endometrium, the lining of the uterus, where the new baby would normally find food, nutrition. And if the lining is too thin, the baby can't get food and he dies, starves to death. She starves to death. So it's clear that hormonal contraceptive, the most popular form of contraception, is in fact acts as an abortifacient. I know obstetrician gynecologists that claim they believe that that is the most common mechanism for the way these hormonal contraceptives work. So I mentioned a few organizations there. I know the secular ones don't address contraception ever. I mean, they stay away from it. They avoid it like the plague, National Right to Life, and maybe all the Right to Life organizations around the country have to kind of toe that line. I'm not sure. But organizations that have a Catholic basis tend to include contraception in their agenda, although they probably don't emphasize it as much as they might abortion. So Human Life International would be one of them, American Life League, Population Research Institute, the Catholic Church supposedly condemns all forms of contraception, but they're very quiet about it. I've asked many, many people over the years, have you ever heard a homily on contraception? And the universal answer is no. And that continues to this day. I know of at least one or two young priests coming right out of the seminary, assigned to a Catholic parish as a parochial vicar, they call him, assistant to the pastor. And they give a homily on contraception. Well, I know in one case, when he came back to the rectory, the pastor had gotten several phone calls complaining about this new priest speaking about contraception. They didn't want to hear anything about it. They didn't want to know the truth. And Father said to his new young assistant, preach on contraception one more time. All your belongings will be on the curb. Don't do it. So that's the kind of support these young, energetic, on fire priests I get. So what is this word contraception? It's a contraception. It's a contraction of contra and conception. Contra is against conception, against the beginning of new life. Contraception is thus similar to abortion. Contraception prevents life. Abortion kills life. Pope John Paul II recognized the similarity by calling abortion and contraception both fruits of the same tree. If you Google fruits of the same tree, you'll find that often they inject a rotten tree, the word rotten, the fruits of a rotten tree. So it's, they're certainly related. I like to think about some of the people that I've met along the line, my Life with One More Soul conferences and different things like that. And I've been active with, when I started with One More Soul, one of our missions, part of our mission was to promote natural family planning. And over the years, I've become more concerned about natural family planning. The church approves natural family planning. And I wonder, well, how can that be? And so they have a contradiction in their teaching. They claim that all contraceptives are intrinsically evil and cannot be approved for any reason. But then they prove it for a variety of reasons. If you use periodic abstinence, it's called one way it's called behavior methods, fertility awareness-based methods. So I wasn't planning to get into that today, and I'll try to get off of it here. But it is one of my most serious concerns. A concern in general with the Catholic Church's failure to speak out on all forms of contraception from the pulpit, in their writings, in their newspapers, in their TV programs. It's rare that you'll hear anything about contraception against the beginning of life.
Quick.
Well, I'm on a mission to...
Yeah, a quick question. And Why do you think that the idea of asking people effectively to be responsible with their bodies and the bodies of their partner, why do you think that maybe organizations have kind of thrown in the towel and assumed that just contraception is going to or rather sex is going to happen, we'll just not talk about contraception, and instead deal with the abortion, since, as to your point, one kind of leads to the other. If you encourage people to engage in risky behaviors where there's a chance of having a child result, then you're increasing the chance of of a pregnancy that would then cause somebody to turn towards a Planned Parenthood or something like that. Why have we thrown in the towel, as it were, on the idea of teaching, whether it's abstinence or teaching the right practices?
Why have we not spoken out about contraception in the past? Is that just your question? Or?
Well, yeah, it seems that we've focused on abortion, and obviously that's a huge issue to focus on. But it's not in isolation. There's a entire chain of events. I know that just in my experience, that people have kind of done, well, people are going to do what they do, and it's not something they even want to think about or try to challenge, and they will focus on the abortion instead. It's like if that it seems you're focusing on a link of the chain that is far down the line. There's other things to focus on that happened before that.
Well, one of the things I could focus on is chastity, being chaste, being modest in your dress, and avoiding the occasions of sin, sexual sin. I don't think you hear about that either these days. Maybe people do in some religions, some denominations, some churches. But, it's the culture has adapted to availability and common use of contraception. Why? Well, because there was an article in the Daily News several months ago that said everybody wants intimacy. Everybody wants intimacy. And they very clearly stated what they meant by intimacy. They meant the Procreation Act, the sexual intercourse, sometimes called the Marriage Act, the Marital Act, whereby human life is created. And why? Well, because it's the most enjoyable, most delightful thing that a man and a woman can do together. I think I can say that. And so everybody wants to participate in that, almost everybody. And so, but they don't want to have the burden of a child that comes automatically with that. That's the essence, the essential purpose of this act is to create new life. And we have to realize, though, that only God can create new life. But in his humility, in his love for us, he made us the doorkeeper. He can't produce life by himself. He made us in his image and likeness because he wanted us to, on our own free will, open the door for him to create a new life, for him to create a soul, to join with us in this marvelous, faith, beautiful, sacred, holy act of procreation. And until we do that, he can't make new life. He made it himself. He made it that way. He's humble with him. So contraception interferes with that process. It says, no, we want to enjoy this act. We want to have the fun of it, but we won't have any baby with it. No. So what does God do? What does God do when he created this act? He made it delightful, made it enjoyable, made it fun, so that we would participate in it. And, it's the females, the men are always happy to participate in a procreation act. Females often less so. But when they're fertile, their libido peaks. what a great designer God is. He designed airplanes in the Air Force, but I don't know if we've been smart enough to do something like this, which God has done. So the couple that uses natural family planning avoids that fertile time. So the woman is kind of cheated in a way. She doesn't get to participate in the Procreation Act when it's most enjoyable to her and to her husband. In general, though, contraception is one of the side effects, I guess, of it. I mean, its main purpose is to prevent conception, prevent birth. Another name for it would be birth control or family planning. But if you engage in contraception, birth control, family planning, you're not going to get the same pleasure from it as if you were not using contraception. A young man at Elizabeth Midlife Center several years ago said, when you use a condom, you're having sex. When you don't use a condom, you're making love. It's very intuitive, I thought. It's very, very correct. Couples that use contraception have a higher probability of divorce than those that do not. We did created a pamphlet at One More Soul several years ago, the connection between contraception and divorce. And the heart of that pamphlet was a chart of total fertility rate and divorce rate on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal axis. And it starts in 1800 and ran to 2015 or something like that. But it was amazing to me because in 1800, the total average American woman birthed 7 children. She birthed 7 children. Now, at that time, she probably lost 2 early in her lives. But she was happy to have children. Children were recognized as a blessing. She didn't have any running water in her house. She didn't have indoor toilets. She didn't have a car, electricity, supermarkets to go to. And yet she birthed happily 7 children. Now, in 1839, Charles Goodyear invented the vulcanization of rubber. What did he do? He immediately applied it to making condoms and diaphragms. And there had been a small, family business starting up when people were making sausages. They used the intestines of animals, but they also made crude condoms. So between 1800 and 1840, the total fertility rate average dropped a little bit. But beginning in 1840, the drop was precipitous. And Andrea Tone, in her book, Desires and Devices, or Devices and Desires and Devices, documents the history of contraception in the United States. And she claims that it was this invention that caused the use of contraception to escalate. And in 100 years, the average total fertility had dropped from almost 7 down to 2. So by 1940, it was down to 2. And it's hovered around 2 for quite a while and then went up during the Second World War and immediately after. But then the pill came along, the second great technology advance in contraception. And again, total fertility average dropped down to 2 again. And it stayed around 2 ever since. It's way below 2 now, 1.7. We're not even reproducing ourselves anymore. So divorce was plotted along with this total fertility rate average. And it starts out at 0 in 1800. No data. And then it gradually increases, but not as fast as the total fertility rate drops. So it takes a while for the marriage to go sour on contraception, but eventually it does. And the divorce rate rapidly increased. And when the pill came out, it just shot way up, way up. So that's one of the risks of contraception. It's not only anti-life in the sense of preventing life from beginning. It has an effect on marriage, which marriage by purpose and by definition, by God's design, is to create new life, create children, and continue the human race. So the life of the marriage, the life of their progeny, is also decreased by the pill. So, and all kinds of contraception, doesn't matter. What are some other harms of contraception that are anti-life? Well, all the hormonal methods are unhealthy in several ways. Birth control pill is well documented to increase the risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and when I say the pill, I mean any hormonal contraceptive, stroke, cardiovascular events, heart attack in young girls, for example, just unheard of before the pill, not very common with the pill, but certainly a risk. What else? Well, it affects the environment. The estrogen in the pill, when urinate, goes into the recovery system, the sewage treatment plants. But estrogen is one of those forever chemicals that we hear about now that the water treatment plants would like to get rid of. I don't know if they focus on estrogen ever, but the effect on the environment is that the fish in the streams that receive these byproducts of our bodies are affected. I believe it's the male fish that have been depopulated. And other people, and some people say that there's been a drop in male fertility, sperm count, that they attribute to the water that we drink, which has estrogen in it. So,
that's actually, if I may really quickly, I saw a study on that. I don't recall all the details. It was a few years ago, but it was in the River Thames in the United Kingdom. And there were serious changes in fish and other amphibians, and they determined it was because of the hormones. And one of the primary causes were some of the pills that people were just throwing out, flushing down the tube, and that they were appearing in quantity in the river.
And I've also read where the factories where these pills are manufactured, the workers that work there are at higher probability of getting cancer. I suppose most of them are women that work there, and they end up with breast cancer or ovarian cancer just because they have some of the powder maybe get into their lungs or into their body. Somehow they breathe it in. We're concerned about the coronavirus. They should be concerned about the powder from these pills and these chemicals. But yes, thank you so much for that interruption. And so maybe it'd be good to tell you a few stories. When my first wife and I came to the Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson, back in 1962, we had our first child with us, and we moved into a cul-de-sac that was populated by people that all moved in about the same time. The area had all been renovated. We all had new furniture, new rooms, new paint, new whatever, washing dryers. And so we got to know each other. We were there for 3 years. And when we left in 3 years, we had 3 kids. And the neighbors across the cul-de-sac walk out with 3 kids also. So the mother of those 3 across the cul-de-sac, I remember this vividly. She came charging out of her house on a Saturday morning. Some of the other mothers were sitting down at the picnic table folding diapers, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs, "I'm pregnant! I'm pregnant! I just know it! I'm pregnant!" And I thought, well, how could she know she was pregnant? And well, she knew because Friday night was one of the most beautiful nights of their marriage, apparently. And she had these experiences twice before. So I thought it was just a beautiful confirmation of God's plan that this act, when it's fertile, when it's perfect, is so beautiful in so many ways. So the other interesting story, another interesting story, is from the Couple League magazine. I don't recall the year. It's maybe a year or 2 ago. This woman wrote an article. I think the title was "I Can't Imagine Life Without Her." Well, she was an up-and-coming professional woman, married to a professional man. I don't know what their professions were, but they were apparently doing well, and they were using natural family planning to avoid conception, to avoid a child. But one morning, one week, she realized, hey, I'm late. How can I be? I can't be pregnant. We know how to do this. We've been doing it for years. We got it done right. The simple thermal method. So she went to the drugstore and got a couple of pregnancy test kits. Lo and behold, came back positive. Tried another one. Still positive. For 3 or 4 days in a row, she was taking 4 or 5 tests a day.
That's an expensive habit.
She kind of gave up and went to the doctor, and he confirmed that, yes, you're pregnant. And it turned out that she'd been going to a chiropractor, that whatever he did, he said, oh, I forgot to tell you, it affects your fertility cycle. Oh my gosh. So anyway, they adapted to the idea of being parents. And after the child was born, had her for a little while, a little girl, she says, I can't imagine my life without her. And I think that's not an uncommon response to a surprise pregnancy. And it shouldn't be. It should be the norm. It should be appreciative. We love children. We love babies. Babies are wonderful. So one of the things that let's see, I'm trying to think of other reasons why we like contraception. Well, we do love contraception. Well, the Catholic Church, as I said before, implicitly by its silence approves of contraception. And they, of course, push natural family planning. It's offered in most dioceses at some level of enthusiasm, shall I say, to couples preparing marriage. And I've never heard of a program where the pre-Cana teaching encouraged supernatural family planning. Well, what's supernatural family planning? Well, that's letting God plan your family. Let God plan your family. Don't try to interfere with this. He knows more about anything than you do. He knows more about creation and procreating than you do. And he knows you'll have 9 months to adjust to this new phenomenon. You have 9 months to prepare yourself for this child to enter the world, shall we say. And he can a woman's body is very sensitive, and she can lose a period, lose her fertile time for a number of reasons. Any kind of stress on her body affect her cycle. They claim that the co-eds in universities, their cycles synchronize. How can that be? Well, because they're all under stress at the same time, finals. So they don't ovulate. And then all of a sudden, they have their cycles synchronized. So what about a woman that gets sick? She might lose the fertility phase of her cycle, not ovulate. If there's a death in the family, or financial stress, or lots of different things that could cause that fertility cycle to mess up, so to speak. And God's in control. So I'm familiar now with 2 books written by women who, with their husbands, decided they would not use anything to prevent the child that God wanted them to have. The first one that I'm familiar with was published by One More Soul. The author is Anne Cherney. The title of her book is Supernatural Family Planning, the original method. The original method, before there was contraception, 1800, for example, not much available. So she and Denny had 10 children. Yes, they had some rough spots. Yes, they were tempted to try natural family planning, but they chose not to. And when their fertility times were over, they had 10 children. And the last time I checked with her, they had 50 grandchildren. All 10 of their children were married. The older ones had large families already. The younger ones, not so many. And they all but a couple of those grandchildren, live within 25 minutes of their home in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So they get together quite often. And these kids, their best friends are their cousins. And they just love being together. And there's a couple times, I think they do maybe Sunday brunches or something like that every month or two. But the main event of the year is on New Year's Eve. They all get together in what became the final big house for this family. And they have designed games, contests, food of all kinds. And they have just a great, great time for hours on end. And Anne tells about sitting and just watching this, just being with this, and saying, this is got to be like heaven is going to be. And when you think about it, the child that you contracept, God, before time began, God conceived of the children, people he wanted to have with him for all eternity. He knew everything. He knew how everything going to shake out. There were no surprises for him. So, and he knew that some of those children would not be conceived physically. They would not be born. They would not be baptized. So what's going to happen to them? Well, they don't exist. So, just forget about them. Well, I don't think God forgets about them. I'm thinking that maybe at the end of time, end of the world, when Jesus comes again, God will go to plan B and create those children that were missed by contraception. In his mercy, in his love, I think is a real possibility. I don't know if there's any theologians that ever have considered that, but maybe that's what will happen. The other book that I know about that was written by another couple that did not use any form of contraception. It was called Natural Family Planning, and the Christian Moral Code was definitely against natural family planning, as Anne Cherney's book is. In the case of Anne Cherney's book, Supernatural Family Planning, she could not get to a point where she would condemn natural family planning. She still thought there are situations where it should be approved, should be allowed. And it is, according to the church. But even though they never used it, and even though her book gives all the arguments against natural family planning, as does Jean Dvorak's book, Natural Family Planning in the Christian Moral Code. Dvorak's ended up with 14 children in Minnesota. And in her book, she goes through all 14 of those and what they do. It didn't give us their names, but one of the questions somebody asked her was, did you ever have any life-threatening pregnancies? Well, she said yes. And it turned out to be 4 out of the last 5 children. But she survived. And they're all doing well. Like I said, and they have 50 grandchildren also. This was a book, 4th printing, 1915, I believe. 2015, I should say. So children are a blessing. And children that have siblings are blessed with them. And families, parents that have 4, 5, 6 children, they're blessed. If they only have 1 or 2, they don't have that, I don't know, the kids, maybe they're best friends, but if they have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, they have many more playmates. They don't depend on their parents so much to be entertained. They entertain themselves. I've seen it in my own family. I see it in other families, even in families where there is no father. That is a common thing. So I remember another story. One more soul used to do teacher training, NFP teacher training, and we typically taught the Family of the Americas method, Family of the Americas Foundation method, which is a mucus, cervical mucus only method, like the Billings method. So I was checking in the people that were coming to the class, and one of the ladies said, I asked her why she was there. And she says, well, we really like NFP. I was a virgin, had engagement, and started our marriage. So my doctor wanted to put me on the pill, have my body adjust to it before the wedding. So I let him do that. My husband-to-be and I decided that we wanted to wait a year or 2 before we'd have a child. So she was on the pill, honeymoon, first few months of marriage. And she said, I enjoyed sex, the intimacy, procreation act, but it wasn't mind-blowing. And then we decided to start opening ourselves up to a child. So we got off the pill. And she said, wow, what a difference. Oh my gosh. Sex changed from ho-hum to mind-blowing. And so she was there to learn how to use it when they wanted to use it when they didn't want to use it or whatever. But it's again confirmed to me the harm of the pill, the importance of children to marriage, to the church, to life, to our culture. And it was a good deal. Natural family planning has this dual purpose of being available to increase the probability of conception or decrease the probability of conception. Another lady told me, no, without natural family planning, we wouldn't have any children. Now we have 3. We'll probably never have any more. But there was just a few hours in a cycle where I could get pregnant. And with natural family planning, we knew when that time was. And now we have 3 beautiful children.
I have to, excuse me, we're up almost against time here. And I did want to ask one question. This has been very thought-provoking. And would you say that there is an argument to be made that the drive to prevent pregnancies through, whether it be through the morning after pill or various other contraceptive methods and all the focus that's been on it, do you think that there's an argument to be made that it's been perhaps more damaging to society from secondary and follow-on effects than abortion itself?
Absolutely true. Contraception changed our culture. People say, well, we were an agrarian culture almost exclusively back in 1800. And as women, as couples reduced their family size, the wife became more available for the job. And so there were 2 incomes coming in. They could afford a car, they could afford a nicer home, they could afford TV, some of the finer things of life. But what did they lose? They lost children. And there's an article written by William Newman, maybe, that I try to get. It's a commentary on John Paul II's statement that abortion and contraception are fruits of the same tree. And he, in this article, which I can only get to the abstract, he talks about many ways in which contraception affect the culture. We've talked about a few things here, but just a small few. We live in a totally fake world. And of course, it's the only world we've lived in. So what's our normal? We talk about what's the new normal going to be. I would love to see the new normal be what it might have been if we didn't have any contraception.
And no, this has been a very good talk. This has given me a lot personally to reflect on. And I'd like to thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of our LifeTech 2020 virtual conference. And for those people who are listening, we have another session. It's going to be starting up in just a few minutes with Dave Banaszak. And so watch out for that. The link is on our website at lifetechconference.org. So thank you again for coming. Thank you again to the viewers for listening. And we will see you in the next session.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye.